Welcome, champions. My name is Eric P.J. Davis, and I'm an indie filmmaker. This is Arcadia. I'm going to go back to, here was a time when we made Dead by Midnight. I remember Tori, he was like, I was capping myself when I made that short, the story. I wanted to make a medieval, and I'm like, it's just too expensive. And he says, don't limit yourself. Just don't limit yourself. Do whatever you want. 15 minutes, just have fun with it. So I decided, I'm playing Final Fantasy XIV right now, and I love the game. What happens if people just get trapped in the game? That's what the Heroes of Time was based off of. People playing an MMO, and they get trapped in the game. And I mean, it's very obviously inspirational by isekai stories from animes. And I wanted to work with
Tron. There's all kinds of stories along that line,
yeah.
Right?
And I wanted to work with Dylan. I never got to work with him that much. I never actually got to direct with him. He did a minor thing in Creepy Dolls. He got to do a little voiceover, which was awesome. But I wanted to work with him. So I fought with one of our other directors, Jay. He wanted him, and I was like, no, I'm getting Dylan. And I'm so happy I got Dylan, because I got Dylan, and I got to work with a couple of other great actors and actresses from Atlanta, and we made the short. But it was only 15 minutes, and I knew there was more to this. Like, I just couldn't tell a story. I couldn't tell the story that I wanted in 15 minutes. It's just a cool concept, but it's not a story. And that's why I really decided to go all at this story, the story that I'm doing now, that I needed to get a team together, because the story I wanted to tell was much grander. It was much more personal. I wanted to bring to life the feelings that I had when I played Final Fantasy XIV, and all the people that had changed my life. People I didn't know in real life. I just knew them from a video game. But I wanted to tell their story as well as mine, and tell you why I fell in love with these people that I didn't know in real life. And that's how games can do. That's how communities are formed, I feel like, in ways. And it's just a neat thing. So I hope I was able to honor them when I made the script, but I couldn't make the script without these people, these three: Dylan, John, and Doug. And I want to dive more into the details of what we're doing, but we also are trying to build a world, and we're trying to make more vlogs so people could understand our vision. I want you to be part of this vision, and we're also wanting to pump out shorts, 1-minute shorts that will explain a little bit of what this world is about.
I wanted to ask real quick, because I know you talked a lot about your inspiration being Final Fantasy,
yeah,
right? And I'm guessing probably some other games, but that was the main thing where you developed relationships with people online. But also TV shows, right? What are a couple or three TV shows that you saw that really impacted you, made you see the potential of TV and storytelling and characterization and stuff?
So I think 2010 was some of the best eras for TV shows. Walking Dead came out. Game of Thrones came out. The Breaking Bad universe, I mean, at the time, Breaking Bad was out, which eventually spinned off Better Call Saul. I love all three of them. Those are some of the top shows to me, just because they're so character driven. So that's what inspired me on the story standpoint of making a show. Yes, I love Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy XIV is probably one of the best story driven video games out there, as well as it's obviously an MMO. But imagine combining all that together, and I truly think we made something special that can honor these shows that I was inspired by, and these games I was inspired by.
Doug, you watch a lot of anime, other TV and movies, I'm sure also. What are some of your inspirations? What are you drawn on to add to this and get your hype from, or whatever?
So I played a lot of World of Warcraft, and I've also played a lot of games in general, from JRPGs to other MMOs or the card game that are at least labeled as such, like Warframe. But I also read a lot of books. Everything from The Wizard Truth to Ranger's Apprentice to Percy Jackson to George R. Martin, J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis. Just if it's a fantasy book, there's a 75% chance I've read it. I know there's still a lot out there, so I can't say I've read everything. But what really brought me onto this project was it reminded me a lot of the anime Log Horizon. And while I was working with Eric, we watched through the show and got inspired for a lot of ideas for the show from it.
Dylan, what about you? What are some of the things you've drawn on for inspiration in this process? The TV shows or games or movies you've acted in, or what else? What else?
So most of my writing background is either short plays or stand-up and sketch comedy is kind of really where I cut my teeth and dug in for myself on the writing side. Keeping that in mind while getting to do a lot of what we were doing back, a decade ago with Monster Buster was horror and horror adjacent kind of film indies, which, if you're an
Monster
indie
Buster,
director.
that's Tori's production
That was
company?
Tori's, yep.
And Tori,
Yeah,
we've mentioned his name a couple times. He went to film school in Atlanta, and he's produced several movies, mostly in the horror realm, right?
Yes, yeah. Doing the horror work with Tori and, getting to meet Eric throughout everything has been fantastic, because The Twilight Zone was one of my favorite shows growing up, and I think it's still maybe one of the biggest sources of my love for all things science fiction and horror to this day. So yeah, as long as we can keep things creepy, Eric will be in good shape.
Yeah, and I guess that's like something that we never really touched on, but there is a mystery, a horror aspect to the show. A lot of it is drama, fantasy, sci-fi. It's a lot of the categories for this film, but there is also a horror aspect, and we wanted to maintain that, because when it comes down to it, I have a horror background, as well as Dylan, and we love it. Do you want to add anything, John? I said, what's more of your inspirations? I feel like we touched a little bit on it, but what are more of yours?
I would say for me, it was really from an English high school English teacher that I had, I remember, in general in school, I kind of wanted to learn. I wanted to be a good student or whatever, but I didn't want to do homework. When I left school, I just wanted to ride my bike, play basketball, watch TV or whatever. And so I could get away with most of the teachers. And the test would be like, who was the main character? Or and we would talk about it in class too. So I could get away with even getting A's and B's without even reading the books. You know what I mean? But I had in my senior year a teacher who was, and it wasn't like she was mean or anything. She just had a higher standard. She didn't just expect us to read the book. She expected us to read 2 or 3 books by the same author and their autobiography. And her questions would be things like, why did the author choose this setting? Not what was the setting. You know what I mean? And some of the lessons she was teaching about literature, I just applied to film, but movies at first and TV shows eventually. And I just really like something that's really well designed and really thought out. It has a lot of layers and the use of symbolism and meaning beyond entertainment, I'll say. And that comes out in a lot of ways. And I guess another big influence on me was Game of Thrones. I had a bunch of friends. I hadn't read the books. I had a bunch of friends that had, and they're all telling me I'm going to love it. And I happen to have a couple friends that were doing a quote-unquote podcast about the show. But no one even knew what a podcast was at that time. I didn't anyway. And we just got a little lucky that both podcast and Game of Thrones blew up at the same time. And my role was, since I hadn't read the books, sometimes me and my friends who had read the books would have differing opinions. They would be very upset by something that happened and would think it's bad. And I'm like, actually, I think that's really good for XYZ reason. And sometimes they would realize that it wasn't necessarily bad, it's just different from their expectations. And that was kind of my role in the podcast, was to unsolely, to be the person's opinion on a show without expectations from the books. But basically, I'm doing book reports. You know what I mean? Basically, every week of Game of Thrones, I was doing a book report. Something in class. In high school, I didn't want homework. Now, I'm like, ooh, please give me homework. But I don't know, some of that analysis, some of that literary analysis or television analysis, whatever, I feel that's maybe what
Blood
I'm bringing
into
to
this.
the table here. You know, like I'm also inspired by all kinds of things, from The Princess Bride to Star Wars to Better Call Saul. I've mentioned It's Always Sunny and Succession or whatever. I try to watch all the top whatever, whether it's the award-winning and or popular. I want to keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in media, and there's a lot to learn from it, a lot to be inspired from it, and I think little pieces of it I've brought to the table here. So,
well, for now, we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to dive more into what really drove us to make the decisions we did. We'll talk more about our past works and more about like what really captivated me on Heroes of Time and why I just had to make this show worth making. So, what are we really about? Quite simple. We're just passionate filmmakers trying to connect with you, make our dreams come true. So, if you have any questions, leave a comment below. We'll try our best to answer the questions without any spoilers. Thank you for watching this video, and be ever vigilant.